Innovation is in our veins. Soon the whole world will know our names. Sharing our knowledge and freedom reign. We here for the people, you know it's our way. Setting foundations is part of the dream. It doesn't matter if you're new to the game. Listen up now, cause we all gon' say, elevate, 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 higher, elevate, 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 higher. We gon' rise up, we all gon' shine. Work through adversity, stay on the grind. Elevate, elevate, this is our time. Elevate, elevate.
Welcome to the Elevate Podcast, everyone. It's so great to have you all on one more time. It's your boy Josh, and I'm grateful to be back on with you yet again. It's Tuesday, and it's great to be on this Tuesday night, and I'm sure many of you were just desperate to try to get this episode out because so much has happened over the weekend. It really was like, well, we're going into Thanksgiving weekend here. Let's make things spicy, shall we? That's exactly what happened. So we'll be talking about, India and Canada not really on talking terms anymore. Well, we might be facing a breakup with a big country partner on the global scale. And that's going to be interesting to talk about. Also, I don't know, people on the Liberal Party being a little nervous and sweating their positions and sweating their jobs are kind of like, do we start signing documents to oust Trudeau? Do we perform a coup and do what they did in the States and maybe get Biden ousted and put another person in? And this, so much more, because I have a whole list right here. There's documents came out, PBO, PMO, all of it. There's so much to talk through and get into. I'm excited. I'm overwhelmed looking at this document here. This is going to be probably a good 1 hour episode tonight. I'm just spitballing, putting that out there. It's going to get wild tonight. There's so much to discuss. I'm very excited to get into it with all of you. But first, before we do that, I would like to feast your eyes on our newsletter. We missed this Friday. That was on me. That's on us as a team. It was Thanksgiving weekend. We got tied up in other things as a team, and we managed not to get the newsletter out. So that's on us. We'll try not to allow that to happen again. But please, if you go to our elevatepodcast.ca and scroll over down to find when we post merch drops and more, and plug in your first name, plug in your email, you will be getting the stories that we couldn't get into throughout the week to your inbox on Friday, and that will be happening again this week. Again, there's so much that's gone on and happening. Even with Parliament not sitting, there is a lot to get into and there's a lot to chat about. So that will be a very populated newsletter this week. So we look forward to being able to keep giving you the knowledge and everything that's happening. But secondly, and I would say most importantly, breaking news here in Canada. Breaking news. Canada lists pro-Palestinian group Samadoun as a terrorist entity. Folks, we might have a Canadian government that has a backbone. Isn't that something? Isn't that very interesting? This has come in joint action with the U.S. Treasury. The government of Canada has designated the pro-Palestinian group Samadoun as a terrorist entity in joint action with the U.S. Both governments announced on Tuesday. Samadoun, also known as the Palestinian Prisoner Solidarity Network, has close links with the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, both governments said in announcing the move. The PFLP is a listed terrorist entity in Canada, the US, and the European Union. Violent extremism, acts of terrorism, or terrorist financing have no place in Canadian society or abroad, Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc said in his news release. He added the listing sends a strong message that Canada will not tolerate this type of activity. It's October 15th, y'all. Only took him a week to figure it out, eh? The U.S. Treasury Department has listed Samadoun as a specially designated global terrorist. In its statement, the department said it's declaring Samadoun as a sham charity that serves as an international fundraiser for the PFLP. Last week, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre urged the Canadian government to ban Samadoun. Those calls came on the heels of Samadoun organized protests in Vancouver. The one-year anniversary of Hamas's October 7th, 2023 attack on Israel. The attack killed about 1,200 people and triggered an Israeli counteroffensive that has left about 41,000 dead in Gaza. Catch this, though. Earlier this year, Samadoun's international coordinator, Charlotte Cates, was arrested in Vancouver with a hate crime investigation after she praised the October 7th attack as heroic and brave. Samadoun also posted a statement that called the attack a legitimate military operation. Canada's listing. This is where it gets interesting, guys. This is where it's really important. It's one thing just to come out in the media and say we are listing these guys as a terrorist organization. But there are some consequences that do come with that. Canada's listing of Samidoun as a terrorist entity under the criminal code means certain actions related to the group are now illegal, including activities related to financing, travel, and recruitment. That's a big thing. Because we've been seeing a lot of these pro-Palestine protests happening across North America, various parts of Europe. And it just seems like when you start seeing some of these signs and the way they're organizing, it just seems like there's something behind it all. It's not just a group of people who want to get together for a cause. There's a machine in behind these groups. So it was really cool to be able to see that, okay, listing them as a terrorist organization is really important because now we can cut off their funding. Now we can treat them with hostility. Now they're not protected by our Canadian charter rights, which is a big thing. People were calling for this on October 8th after all the news came out on TikTok of the burning of the Canadian flag in Vancouver, the tearing of it up, calling for death to Canada, death to Israel, and death to the U.S. It is really interesting, the fact that the U.S. and Canada came out as a partnership. I feel like the Canadian government was essentially, their arms were twisted. I don't think they wanted to put this out. I don't think they wanted to do this. But their arms are twisted with the American government also deemed them as a terrorist organization. That's just my personal view. And I think the American government did it because they are facing an election here within the next 3 weeks. And they have to make sure they look like they care about the American people. So what they end up having to do leans over really well with what the Canadian government has to do. And I'm happy they've listed these guys as a terrorist organization because I'm tired of seeing these videos of people attacking our Canadian identity, attacking what we hold dear to ourselves as Canadians, and being able to get away with it and being able to be protected underneath the Canadian Charter of Rights, which they don't deserve to be because they don't care to be a part of Canada. They don't care to be a citizen of this country, as they've demonstrated with their words and actions. So why should they get the same privileges? Or I should say, used the wrong word there. Why should they get the same rights as we do if that's how they're going to act and trample all over them? Whatever he says, whatever the motivation is, whatever people are thinking, at least something's being done. At least something was done. And I'm happy to see it. Next, we move on. The PBO reruns the carbon tax numbers again. The Parliamentary Budgetary Officer, okay? Carbon tax numbers were run again. Spoiler alert, it doesn't look good for the Liberal government. On October 10th, the PBO reran the numbers to remove an inadvertent error, which was they erroneously included the industrial price on carbon in their calculations. Guilbeault says the report clears the air on Pierre Poilievre's big lie and shows that carbon pricing is the most cost-effective way to fight climate change. The report confirms the majority of Canadian households receive more in rebates than they pay in carbon taxes. However, when considering the broader economic effects, such as reduced employment, investment income, these gains are offset for most households except those in lower income brackets. On average, the PBO said households will be worse off by 2030 and 2031 when the economic impact on GDP and investment income is factored in, just not as badly off as his original report suggested last March. The PBO estimates that the tax will reduce Canada's real GDP by approximately 0.8% in 2030. And you look at that number of 0.8%, and man, I wish I had a curtain on this window here of the sun shining in my eyes. I'm getting lit up over here. But the 0.8% doesn't seem like a big number when you factor it in. But it is important, and it is a big issue when a tax is lowering your country's GDP. A tax is supposed to help your country. A tax is supposed to help the people. A tax is supposed to funnel to services that the people are benefited by. That's what a tax is supposed to be. I'm not a huge fan of big taxes, not a huge fan of just rampant taxation, but there's definitely some benefit to getting specific amenities taken care of, specific services taken care of, and taken care of at a high level. But when you tax the people and it's taking a negative impact on our GDP, you as a government, if you really cared and if you really stood by the oath that you swore to serve Canadians, then you would see the numbers and realize we need to find a different way to lower, if that's your goal, lower your carbon imprint while still making sure Canadians are taken care of. 0.8%. Lowering the GDP, a tax lowering your GDP. Ain't that something? That's brutal. Next, inflation is down. Big news came out today. Inflation is down. As of September 2024, Canada's annual inflation rate has decreased to 1.6%. The energy sector experienced a notable price drop of 8.3% year over year, with gasoline prices being a significant contributor to this decline. The Bank of Canada's core inflation metric, which excludes energy and food, remains steady at 1.6 annually. CPI for all items fell by 0.4% in September, indicating a general decrease in consumer prices. Banks are predicting a 50 basis point rate cut. Analysts are saying that if high mortgages and rents were excluded, Canada would be in a deflationary state, indicating a recessionary environment. $520 million in mortgages up for renewal in 2025. With an economy teetering on the edge of recession, it's going to be a rough time. And that is correct. That is true. 1.6% is our inflation rate. The target's 2%. And I'm a huge believer in, I think things need to go the opposite direction. And I think there need to be, as we stated here, a deflationary state. But not this way. This is crazy. It's bonkers the way that's going on here. Analysts are saying if high mortgages and rents were excluded, Canada would be in a deflationary state. That's how high they are. It's absolutely insane that our housing is artificially holding up our inflation rates. So we're going to probably be seeing some big rate cuts coming in here fairly soon. But you know what's going to happen? The Liberals are going to spin this as a positive. That look at us. We brought inflation back down to 1.6%. It's below the target rate. But people who are smart, people who watch this show, watch shows like this, know what's actually happening. They've made life so unaffordable that people are forsaking core goods like food. I'm like, I just can't afford it. That's why prices are starting to come down. People are tapping out. We look at the real estate market, at least here in Halifax, Nova Scotia. There's a bit of a barometer across the country, but here, ours is $500,000. $500,000 and lower, we're seeing houses going like that. Houses that are over $500,000 are just sitting on the market. People are tapped. People are struggling. And this is a big showing of that in a big way. And moving on to big trouble. TD. Oh man, TD Bank getting in trouble down in the States, y'all. TD Bank will pay $3 billion to settle charges that it failed to properly monitor money laundering by drug cartels, regulators announced on Thursday. The fine includes a $1.3 billion penalty that will be paid to the U.S. Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, a record fine for a bank. TD also intends to pay $1.8 billion to the U.S. Justice Department and plead guilty to resolve the U.S. government's investigation that the bank violated the Bank of Secrecy Act and allowed money laundering. That's a big no-no. For a bank to get in trouble, 1.8 to them in general, it's a pretty big number. But still, to a bank, it's not a whole lot. It's a slap on the wrist in a lot of ways. But it is the fact a Canadian bank in the States is got caught with money laundering, which we're not surprised. It's happening up here too. With welcoming so many different people of various backgrounds, when we don't know their criminal backgrounds, we don't know why they're here. We know that foreign governments are pressuring citizens that have come from their countries and now living here in Canada or in the US. We know these things are happening. not surprised that money laundering is happening through these financial institutions on top of it. That's what allows all these crime rings to kind of ring true and affect our politics here. That's what's happening. So TD Bank got caught. Do I think TD's going to change? No. They're going to move around it, work around it some way, somehow. But that's going to be, it's just what they're going to do. Very interesting. And interesting lighter news. We have SpaceX successfully landed its Starship rocket. So SpaceX achieved a significant milestone on October 14th with a successful test flight of its Starship rocket. For the first time, the Super Heavy booster was successfully caught upon return using SpaceX's Machazilla system, giant mechanical arms designed to secure the booster as it descends to the launch pad. This successful landing demonstrates the spacecraft's capability to perform precise descent maneuvers essential for future missions, which I think is really interesting. I think that's fascinating. And shadow technology, we love to see it. In February of 2024, remember all the way back at the beginning of the beginning of this year, and how the justice system down in the States was weaponized to take out a political opponent? Well, we got news on that, folks. So back in 2024, or February of 2024, New York court found Trump liable for fraudulently inflating his net worth to secure favorable terms from lenders and insurers. Yeah, you know, like the crime that had no victim. Remember that one? Where he went to the bank with his assets and they both agreed on how much things cost. Yeah, he got charged for that. Remember that? This resulted in a judgment and fine of approximately $489 million. Again, this was designed to drain Trump's bank accounts. But on September 26, 2024, Trump's legal team presented arguments before a New York appeals court, a panel of 5 judges. The judges appeared skeptical of the state's arguments, particularly questioning the use of a consumer fraud statute in this context. They noted the absence of direct financial harm to any parties, which I think was an important thing. So now that's been taken care of, which I think was very important, very interesting, because we knew a lot of everything they've brought forward on this man has been false. And people who can watch it from the outside and not be politically caught up in their biases can see that. Normal people realize what they're doing to this man, and it's only making him more popular. We saw it back when they first raided Mar-a-Lago. I remember being on this show with guests, Dalton and Reg at the time, who were making fun of me for thinking that this was not a good thing moving forward, that this was setting a very scary precedent. And then there we were, case after case after case, taking shots at this man. It's only gotten worse. And so that's why I thought it was important to call it out when it happened, when they first raided Mar-a-Lago. And then and all the details that came about after that, which was unreal. We ended up finding out the FBI was hoping, and they saw written documents about this. The FBI I'm casting a motivation onto the FBI. But there was documents that provide some clarity or some proof possibly that they were kind of hoping that Trump would have fought back when they raided Mar-a-Lago home. They were looking potentially for a reason to shoot the man. Look it up for yourself. It was crazy. Some crazy documents came about. And a lot of the documents and the photos that we saw of the documents that were incorrectly stored were also planted. Some of those documents were planted by the FBI. It's only gotten more crazy. So it's good to see him get a dub in this way of at least the justice system is semi-working in the States. Semi-working. It only makes things really crazy as they go into another election season. But that was what was in the news. That took us 20 minutes to get through, y'all. Holy jumping. Segment 1, though, y'all. We are going to get right on into it. Canada and India ties are going to be struggling to recover for quite some time, says the AP News. And the chaos that this relationship has been very interesting since the day Trudeau got into power. 2015, remember that? When he went over to India and did dress up? And people are just like, should you be doing that? Seems like the people are okay with it. But it turned out to be like a huge joke. It only seems like this relationship has gotten more tense over time. A diplomatic row that has strained bilateral relations between India and Canada for over a year has boiled over as the countries expelled each other's top diplomats over the killing of a Sikh activist in Canada, allegations of other crimes. Experts say the diplomatic standoff will make it difficult for both countries to move forward with a once promising partnership and could impact India's ambitions as it tries to protect itself or project itself as a rising world power. India-Canada bilateral relations, which has been on the downslide since last year, will take a further hit, which will take a long time to repair, says Praveen Danti, a senior analyst with the International Crisis Group. Monday's tit-for-tat expulsions came after Canada told India on Sunday that its top diplomat in the country is a person of interest of the 2023 assassination, and that police have uncovered evidence of an intensifying campaign against Canadian citizens by the agents of the Indian government. Canadian Foreign Affairs Minister Mélanie Joly also tied 5 other expelled Indian officials to Nijar's assassination and said Canada's gathered ample, clear, and concrete evidence with identified 6 individuals as persons of interest in the Nijar case. Another foreign government trying to screw around in our processes here in Canada, trying to intimidate and pressure citizens of this country of Indian descent. I've always been curious why Canada has always been so tense and so has taken such an opposition role against India in general and not really China. They've been really quiet about China. But it's interesting that both of these countries have been doing very similar things here in Canada. And it's been such a weak leadership just to say no. Getting rid of diplomats. I mean, that's a big thing. India did it. We're doing it. Those are big issues. It's a big screw you to India, I'll tell you that much. It shows you that we're breaking up. A once pretty decent relationship is now one that doesn't really exist anymore. It's dying. It's a big issue. And so much of a big issue that RCMP gave a statement on this as well.
Investigations have revealed that Indian diplomats and consular officials based in Canada leveraged their official position to engage in clandestine activities, such as collecting information for the government of India, either directly or through their agents, and other individuals who acted voluntarily or through coercion. Evidence also shows that a wide variety of entities in Canada and abroad have been used by agents of the government of India to collect information. Some of these individuals and businesses were coerced and threatened into working with the government of India. The information collected by the government of India is then used to target members of the South Asian community.
The Indian government is kicking out 6 members of Canada's envoy, including our top diplomat in the country.
Canada has done what India has long been asking for. Canada has provided credible, irrefutable evidence of ties between agents of the government of India and a murder of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil. Now it is time for India to live up to what it said it would do and look into those allegations. It is in the interest of both our countries and the peoples of our countries to get to the bottom of this. Canada stands ready to cooperate with India.
That's crazy. This is a big thing. We haven't had this type of tension. Like, the tensions between us and another country have just really never happened. It hasn't been this bad from my understanding and my understanding of our history as a country. Like, this is crazy. So what's happening here? What could be going on behind the scenes? Are they trying to draw our attention away from something else? Maybe. Are they looking just for another story to get Canadians to unite behind something? Possibly. Why have they been so antagonistic of India, specifically India? If it's what we suggested earlier, where they're trying to unite Canada against a common enemy on the outside, I hope it's not that. Because our country it's ready to go on that. the tensions I've seen rising against Indians in this country, astronomical. It wouldn't take much to unite Canadians against a specific. It wouldn't take much to unite Canadians against India. Hate to say it, but it's what I'm seeing. Socially, things are a mess. If that's what, I hope that's not what they're trying to do. But I wouldn't put it past Trudeau to just throw people under the bus to save his butt. Because we're about to get into another story here of, it could be the possibility it was a rough weekend for the boy, a rough weekend for Trudeau. Could be looking for ways to throw somebody else under the bus. It'd be double jeopardy for him. You'd get people hating on India, and then you could turn around to the people who are hating on India and call them racist, and then continue to virtue signal to his base. It would be the most meta thing I've seen this Trudeau government do, but I wouldn't put it past them. I'm very concerned, just as a person, with how much India and Canada are at odds right now. Because we have obviously so many people with lax immigration policies that have allowed so many people from that country in. And they're bringing their politics with them. We saw back in the situation in Calgary, a couple months ago. Punjabis wishing death upon India. Wow. We'll see what happens. It's getting crazy. Trying to unite a people against an outsider. Very possible. Could be an issue. We move on. Trouble in paradise, y'all. Back to what's going on with Trudeau. His party is mounting frustrations. They're getting annoyed. News has come out that MPs are signing their names to a document circulating right now, the party, to oust Trudeau. And I make the joke, this man's going full Wolf of Wall Street. I don't really care what anyone says. People are just like, oh, could this be it? Could Trudeau be out? Could it be done? And he's going full Wolf of Wall Street. I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving. I'm not freaking leaving. The show goes on, he says. I don't think he's going anywhere. They literally have to pull him physically kicking and screaming to get him out of leadership. He's a dictator. He does what dictators do. Clings on to power. Burns countries to the ground just to rule over the ashes. That's who this man is. Only cares about himself. Only cares about having power. So you think he's going anywhere because his party is saying? If he actually cared about his party, forget about the country. If he actually cared about his party, he would have been gone a long time ago. He would see all the polls and how no one likes him here. He's unified a whole country against him. Good for him. We'll see what happens. But this is what's going on behind the scenes. In a story first broken by the Toronto Star, then followed up by CTV and CBC, it seems there is a small cadre of MPs who want Trudeau to go. Reviewing the various reports, it looks like there has been some complaining within the Atlantic and Ontario caucuses. There may or may not be a letter circulating with up to 2 pages of people who have signed onto the call for Trudeau to go. We just don't know who, though, because this is all being done in secret behind closed doors. This is not your usual rabble-rousers. This runs deeper than that, the Star quoted one Liberal MP as saying about the secret, not quite launched yet a coup. No one's really seen the document officially, obviously. Makes sense. But what's going on here? What's happening? We've been hearing for over at least a year and a half now, Liberal MPs getting increasingly frustrated with their leader. We've had MPs that have come out in person since the early years saying they can't get on board with this man and left the party. there's a lot of people who've left the party. Look at all the by-elections that have happened in the past year, just the last 12 months. Look at all the by-elections that have happened. That's unprecedented. If he left, I guarantee you, if he had stepped down from leadership, we wouldn't be seeing all these by-elections happening. Like, there are so many by-elections happening across the country right now because Liberal MPs know they're done. They are not getting voted back in with this man at the helm. And Trudeau sees it, but he really believes he can beat Poilievre. Trudeau believes he can beat Poilievre. That's my only understanding. Two things that could be happening behind right now. For this man to still want to be in after clearly his party wants him out, either he really believes he can win, or two, there's some sketchy stuff going on behind the scenes, and he thinks he can pull something to win an election unfairly. I really hope it's not that. It would be really hard to flip just how I really think it's the first. I really think he just thinks he's awesome and he's not going anywhere. Because even if there was election interference in next year's election for us, I don't think he can overcome the difference that's happening. There's such a huge gap between conservatives and liberals. Like, even if you tried to impact ridings, key ridings, you'd have to do it for at least 85, 90 ridings. Like, it would have to be very, very thoughtful. But there are so many, we talked about it. I mean, we have Klaus Schwab himself says he has a lot of young leaders in Canada's cabinet, the Liberal cabinet. All kinds of young people who are ready to take over. Just because Trudeau goes doesn't mean these ideas are just going to go away. That party is fraught with people with terrible ideas that are going to kill people, continue killing people. Whether it be financially or their health. That's why when people get on X, even if Trudeau comes out tomorrow and says, I'm stepping down, I don't really care. That there's a liberal machine right now, and there's at least a handful of people who are vying for that leadership who are just as bad or worse than him. Don't want it. Don't want to see it. Don't care to see it. And quite frankly, I just want to vote him out. I want to be able to vote that man out. And I'm banking on the fact that he is so prideful and so arrogant that he's going to allow it to happen. So those are what's going on. The other issue that we're seeing on the Hill too is the Liberals and the NDP, and I'm sure there's some conservatives that really hate Poilievre. They think he's a jerk. Think he's disgusting. He's just annoying. They hate him. He's a smart guy. He's sharp. You can't beat him in a debate. And he knows it. He's got a bit of a swagger to him. People hate that. People don't like that about him. There's a part of it too, I think, that Trudeau really doesn't want to let Poilievre win. He wants to beat him in an election because he really doesn't like him. That he is so emotional that he can't see that he's burning down his party in the process. There is no amount of election interference that's going to save that Liberal Party. None. They are so doing so bad. They're going to get relegated to. They may get relegated to not even being a party after the next election. It's getting bad. Like, die-hard red Liberal ridings are flipping because his leadership is so bad. And I could continue beating that dead horse. But what else is going on with this situation? There's 20 signatures so far on it, with its existence of this document being tightly controlled. MPs are particularly concerned about Trudeau's failure to make necessary staffing changes in the PMO and his handling of party strategy. They are also mad at the resignation of Liberal election campaign director. No replacement has been named yet. There's also frustration in Trudeau traveling internationally when key decisions for the party remain unresolved. Like, he's out claiming to be fixing world hunger and all that crap is what he claims to be doing. Well, there's serious issues here at home. He's running. Probably learned some lessons from the Biden-Harris administration south of the border. Probably remember that. Hurricane hit in South Carolina. And while Trump's on the ground in South Carolina trying to help, Harris is on a Call Her Daddy podcast. Trudeau does the same thing. He does the same thing. Do you know what else is interesting, though? This CBC article. They did a whole piece about unvetted refugees coming into Canada, which very surprising seeing it come to CBC, as they've really been doing their best to cover for the Liberals every step of the way. But there's times where there's cracks in the foundation sometimes. Things leak out. There's pieces that are signed off on. And this was interesting. We'll show you the minute 13 of this. This was fascinating.
You had to show a return ticket, you had to show where you were staying, and you had to prove that you had the money to support yourself while you were visiting. But then, at the beginning of 2023, the Canadian government quietly decided to waive those screening requirements for the rest of the year. The reason, they said, was to help reduce a massive backlog of over 2 million visitor applications in the system.
Because they were facing such large backlogs, the government came up with an internal policy of waiving the eligibility assessment.
So they were less stringent about reviewing some of these applications to come here on temporary visas because they just wanted to get through the backlog.
And according to an internal memo that the Globe and Mail got a hold of around the time of the decision, the government knew that this might have consequences, writing that not all applicants would be genuine visitors, and that the department might expect an extra 8,600 asylum claims as a result. In real numbers, Canada saw more than 24,000 additional asylum claims from people landing at airports in 2023.
That's what I'm saying, where people get back to, is this on purpose? Is it just politicians being dense? And it's tough to say. It could go either way. But man, the idea of that, they just had this whole backlog of applicants, refugees. And they just wanted to get through it. So they just let everyone come in. Could be on purpose. Could be stupidity. Doesn't really matter either way. Shows you that a bunch of unvetted people have come into the country because this government didn't want to sort through the applications. That about sums up who they are. That about sums up this office in general and how this government has acted. Last but not least, which I thought was interesting. Canada's capital gains tax didn't nearly yield as much as they thought they would. Less than 40% of the revenue forecast by Liberals. The government's estimated $4.9 billion in 2024 to 2025 fiscal year. They also projected a total of $10.6 billion over the next 5 years that they were going to get over this new tax or the increase of the capital gains taxes. The C.D. Howe Institute released a report suggesting that the increased inclusion rate might generate around $3.3 billion in additional personal income tax revenue over the next 5 years. 3.3. The government estimated 4.9 in 2024, 2025, estimated 4.9. And that they get 10.6 over the next 5 years. The C.D. Howe Institute said they might get 3.3. over the next 5 years. They might get 3.3. So they're not going to get nearly as much as they thought they were going to get in the first year. And they're way off over the next 5 years. Less than 40% of what they thought they were going to get. Who is the CDIO Institute? Who are these guys? Well, they're a Canadian public policy think tank that focuses on economic and social policy research. They're considered one of Canada's most respected and credible think tanks. Their research is peer-reviewed and often cited by others. They are completely transparent in their funding, which is simply by donations from individuals, corporations, and foundations, not the government. You've probably heard about these guys, CD Howe. Well, whoever's running them now, better hope that they, check their cars, make sure there's no gas leaks in their homes, because this is a damning report. Only if it sees the light of day, only if it is shown on shows like this, is it a damning report. Or they can just let it go. Canadians are just so inundated with the stupidity of this administration. They're like, oh, they did some dumb thing again. Another promise they claimed that make them look good. Well, it's actually not doing the job they thought they was going to be doing. They're simply just trying to tax themselves out of poverty. Tax themselves to prosperity. And that's why this country's struggling. They keep increasing taxes, but the taxes just aren't being yielded. And they don't use them properly anyways. What a wild time, man. That, my friends, is our show. We had a lot to get through. A lot going on. We'll see what happens. We're coming down close to the American election down in the States. 3 weeks out. Trump and Kamala doing their rounds. Trump news coming out saying he's going on Joe Rogan. Want to hear something crazy? 3 days after that was announced, or Trump let that loose and found out that it was verified that was going to be happening, Kamala's campaign reached out to Joe Rogan to go on the show. The Democrats who've been hiding from Joe Rogan, lighting Joe Rogan up for X, Y, and Z things over the past several years, calling him all the names, mainly because he's a threat to them and their power. Now they're wanting to go on his show. Reportedly. We don't know yet. Allegedly, I should say. Allegedly. We'll see. I would love to see Joe bring them both on. It would be nice to see them do it at the same time, because Joe is the type of person that could handle doing them both at the same time. Even if it's two separate interviews, I think it would be interesting as well. Because he would not go easy on Kamala. Or Kamala. Camelot. Who I don't know. Whatever her name is. It would be interesting. But last but not least, we have our wild card segment. And just kind of bring some levity to how things are going on in this world. I'm, as you know, big sports fan. Love the Pat McAfee show. And they're doing this segment where they have a hashtag. And the hashtag is, I don't want to overreact, but... And sports fans are just letting loose on their teams and everything that's going on. And so Cleveland Browns, NFL football team, been having a tough go. Tough times. And they have this new quarterback in this year who's not really cutting it. He looked like kind of quit on his team a couple weeks ago and left the field during, just didn't want to go for a fourth down play and just left the field. His name was Deshaun Watson. So there was a fan that wrote into the show and was expressing their frustration with the Cleveland Browns.
Hashtag I don't want to react, but F the new stadium funding. Cleveland has to chip in some tax money to send Osama bin Watson on a one-way ticket to Pyongyang.
Gee.
Holy shit.
What the hell?
Okay. All right, so that's how people in Cleveland maybe feel about the whole quarterback situation. I think it is a little bit of an overreaction to start pinning those things together, but boy, they're about done with it.
Oh my gosh. That I couldn't stop laughing at that one. To conflate Bin Laden and North Korea in one tweet is pretty impressive. And to that frustrate your football team that you call this man Bin Laden and want to send him to North Korea with Kim Jong-un. Wild. People are wild. I gotta watch that again. It's so funny.
Hashtag I don't want to react, but F the new stadium funding. Cleveland has to chip in some tax money to send Osama bin Watson on a one-way ticket to Pyongyang.
Gee.
Holy shit.
What the hell?
Okay. All right, so that's how people in Cleveland maybe feel about the whole quarterback situation. I think it is a little bit of an overreaction to start pinning those things together, but boy, they're about done with it.
They're about done with it. Yeah, they're about done with it. It is pretty wild. And sports fans are crazy. They can take it real personal real quick. Kind of like political viewers, you know. We're kind of nuts, aren't we? We're a little nuts. Well, it's good to have y'all on again with me. We hope you have yourselves a great day, whatever it is you're doing. Whether you be going to work, going to the gym, or just hanging out with the boys or girls. Whatever it is you're doing, wherever you are. We love you. We're out. Peace.